Alright, so with this lecture, I'm going to animate the ball with squash and stretch. I'm using the bloop animation rig for the ball. I'm going to do this a little differently. I'm going to have my view screen. I'm going to use one of my orthographic views, the side view, and animate the ball in the side view only. But first, I'm going to go back to perspective. I'm going to build a plane. But instead of using plane, I'll use a geometry so I can make it to have some thickness. So on my side view, I can sort of see what my ball is actually bouncing on. Extrude that out so it's far. Place it about right here at the bottom of the tip of the ball. I'm just going to make a layer for this guy. Alright. Now, I'm going to start this off the same way. I'll get rid of my grid. Start this off the same way I did the other ball animation, where so I'm going to set a few keys in the right spots. I'm just completely eyeballing this. Thank you, Facebook. I want to have some have it drop down from here. I'm going to show you the way I did it and the things that's going to have to change in order for some of this stuff to actually work. Because obviously before the previous lecture I did with this, ball just bounced and I just had it come right when it hit, it sort of bounced. But to add the squash and stretch, you're going to have to give a little bit and sort of mess around with your curves and your keys, and depending on where your ball bounces to get to capture the squash and stretch. So here we go. So get current graph editor up. These are all weighted tangents. Some extra oomph in there. Sort of adjust as I go. Alright, so I got that part the way I want it. Let's see what it looks like. Now it sort of looks like the bouncing ball I had before. Also, now to add the squash and stretch. So one thing that's going to happen when the ball actually squashes is going to need time for the viewer to sort of read that it's squashing. And right now where I have it, you won't be able to see it actually squash that much right in there. So what I'm going to have to do is probably have to have this key hit twice as long, so it sort of sticks. During that time, I will use my other keys, my controllers, to do the same. So one thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select all my controllers. I press this little button right here to so I'm going to select any geometry, select all my controllers. I'm going to go ahead and set a key on all my controllers on every key, so that if I use a controller, it'll go back to the 0 the next time I set it down, unless I want to change it. So right here, basically this right here, I want this controller sort of stretch for the ground. So I have it stretched sort of tips right there. So as the ball's falling down, sort of get this egg looking shape because of gravity. It's showing that it's going faster. And right here, it hits the bottom, so it's going to squash a little bit. But I want to use this top one, which I want to set a key here so it doesn't bend or anything. I want to squish it down. So now I get this sort of look right here. One thing I want to do still want this guy to be just a little bit down. Still squashing him like so. Grab this bottom one. Keep it the same. So now it feels like it's squashing when it's hitting. So now you see it automatically it pops right back up. So at that frame, I want to bring this bottom one, up. And when it comes up here, everything sort of goes back to 0. And now it's just at its normal shape. But as it comes back down, same thing. I want to start pushing a little bit more. So it goes up and it starts to come down. But once it hits, and do the same thing with that one. So same thing with this one, where I had a double key here, so you can sort of see that squash. So we're going to need to do it here, so you can sort of see the same thing. I want to put it at 19, so it goes up and this would be something you definitely have to play with. This is what I got so far. Oh. I may have to go back and change my curvature on some of my controllers. Yes, because I can hear it now. Look at my curvature. Looks a little crazy. I noticed that this guy wasn't coming down hard enough. And it's because of this tangent right here. You can make sure it's broken. Get it back to being like so. Get this guy being back to, okay, it's not broken either. Like that. I'll probably just basically go through all these, whoops, and do the same thing. Sort of fix them. I want to fix my tangents so that they are working properly, and then go back and sort of see what it looks like. Still probably a little too fast. It's a little too fast for the eye to sort of gather what's going on. But if I slow it down a little bit, see, like one of the things you want to watch out for is you don't get one of these things where it's like this extruded out, then the next frame is already starting to bend back to its shape. You don't want that. You want to make sure it keeps this shape all the way until it's going to, practically hit. So I need to make sure I go back in, grab the proper controllers, make sure it has that stretch feel all the way through. And the same thing here. One thing I want to make sure is when the ball hits down here, that much stays covered with the ground, so it doesn't look like the ball sort of squishes through the middle. And these last few bounces, since it's sort of decreasing in weight, it's going to sort of have just do it a little bit of it. So now this is what I got. And that's how you want to add some squash and stretch to your now ball animation. Now the other two elements I want to put in is just the moving it forward and rotating it. And luckily with this controller, with this rig, it's fairly simple to do rotation because you have several ways you can rotate it this way, which will rotate your squash and stretch. So you can animate it towards the bounce if it's going forward. Make sure I got this correct. And this is how you would animate the or rotate the geometry. And this one sort of rotates everybody together, so your squash and stretch will rotate together. Normally, I wouldn't rotate the squash and stretch together. I would grab the red controller and use that for your rotation. That way, your squash and stretch, you can sort of manipulate it going this way or that way without having much interference with the other portion of the animation. Let me go ahead and move this forward. Let's move forward to about right there. That's on the z-axis. That's correct. So several things with this already. If once I start moving it forward, my angle is going to have to change to sort of match the movement that it's going. So right now it's sort of straight up and down. It's going to have to point sort of to the direction that it's actually going. So it's going here. So one way I can get it to point sort of in that direction is to actually have I can smooth like the squash and stretch around. So it's just falling. I push this back so it looks like it's actually pointing towards, or push this forward, either or. Obviously, I need to adjust it at each frame. As it bounces, so I can sort of have it. Oops. Make sure it stays in that direction. So it sort of pops, almost like it's looking towards the next direction. And this is where your rotation will come in too. So it doesn't look like it's a live ball bouncing. It'll look like more of a physics ball bouncing. So start you off like this. Go into my perspective view to grab this controller. I'm actually just going to rotate them. So it goes right there. And the stop is a little bit abrupt. But that's a quick way to sort of do a bouncing ball with squash and stretch and moving it forward with this particular rig. Makes it a little easier with the setup that it has. So one thing you can also do is I don't like how it just sort of stops right here. And obviously my movement is sort of stopping right there. So I'm going to grab my controller, grab Z, F. I'm just going to have it move a little further than when everything else sort of stops. And that last part where it slides, that's when I'm going to go in, grab my rotation from here, see it hits here, and it sort of slides to about right there. I'm going to try to match that slide by rotating it one thing I probably want to do is make it a little bit more interesting if I have it roll back a little bit after it stops. So he slides and then he rolls back. And I can rotate him. Oops, wrong way. Rotate my red controller a little bit backwards. So now it slides and it sort of rolls back. Just adding that little bit of flair to it. So with that, now I got this. In the way I broke it down, just to make it simple, is I started off with the up and down, just the y-axis, bouncing it up and down. Then I started adding my squash and stretch into it. Then I started adding my forward motion. Then after adding my forward motion, I started adding the rotation into it. And then started, finessing the rotation. If you follow that method, I think it makes it a little bit simpler and it breaks it down a little bit better for you. So with that, happy animating and hope this helps. All right.